Connecting the dots, connecting his guests to the world, creating more connections. Welcome to The Connection. Meet your host, author, coach, Air Force veteran, Jay Morales.
This episode introduces us to Byron Bode, Vietnam veteran, helicopter pilot, who served our nation from 1967 to 1970. He flew over 1,025 combat hours with courage and grit. Some of his distinguished awards include Army Commendation Medal awarded for Valor, Silver Star, Bronze Star Medal, Distinguished Flying Cross, Air Medal with 4 oak leaf clusters, 1 awarded for Valor. Please honor our veterans by sharing this episode and their stories.
Byron, this is the first day that we've truly met. I've heard so much about you. John Bode, your nephew, is that correct?
Correct.
And I always heard about this guy, Byron, I probably 4 or 5 years ago. Right. And John said, my uncle, he's a Vietnam veteran, and little bits and pieces. And then all of a sudden this Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial started popping up. People were working on it, and that's when your name really emerged. So Byron, if you'll introduce yourself and kind of what your connection is here to this Huey behind me, and we'll just frame the story from there.
My name is Byron Bode, and I'm just thrilled to be involved with the Nebraska Vietnam Veterans Memorial because this helicopter behind me is one that I actually flew when I was in Vietnam. And it's quite interesting the way that this whole memorial happened. I think it's all by circumstance, or it was supposed to be very unusual set of circumstances. The idea for this memorial came up, in 2017, I believe it was.
Sure, yeah.
And they decided they wanted a helicopter, but couldn't find one. Apparently they found some connection to somebody in Bennington, Vermont, who had the helicopter, but couldn't raise the funds to do what they wanted to do, so it was donated to Omaha. And the tail number of the helicopter was recognized by another pilot who lives in Florida.
Yeah.
And he got a hold of the crew chief in California, who was the original crew chief to this aircraft.
Wow.
And a little backstory, at our unit in Vietnam, we were rocketed and 4 of our aircraft were destroyed all at once. And so we got 4 brand new helicopters, and this was one of the brand new helicopters that we received. And the crew chief, the original crew chief on this aircraft, wound up having this aircraft assigned to him on his 21st birthday. So he thought that this was his birthday present. And what's really great for this memorial is that this gentleman, whose name was Craig Fouts, was trained by his father in his father's business when he and his brother worked for his dad to keep a daily journal. And so while he was in Vietnam with this helicopter, he kept a daily journal of the events of happening of this helicopter while he was on it. And that's why it's so significant to this memorial. And originally, apparently, they had this designed or thought to be a Red Cross or a medevac helicopter, the dioramas that they had set up.
Yes.
And when Craig contacted me about it, and I saw the diorama, and I just thought, we got to do something. So I wrote a letter to the foundation here, and I said, if you're going to restore the helicopter, it should be restored to its original first flying condition.
Yes.
And that was with the nose art of the Snoopy.
Yes.
And the nose.
Yes.
And because our platoon was known as the Snoopy platoon due to our Snoopy scouts.
Yeah.
So, and then when they found out that the journal existed and all of the history, it was a no, it was an automatic for them.
Yes, that's great.
Because their goal to have an educational center here going forward, it was just automatic.
You know, first of all, Byron, I mean, to even talk about this, can you bring us back to let's talk about how old were you when you joined the military?
Uh, I was 21 when I joined the military in 67, and I had a low draft number, and
Okay.
so
Yes.
and college wasn't going as well as it probably should have.
Okay.
And so I knew I was probably going to get drafted, and they had this program that if you enlisted, you could have a guaranteed school, and I've always loved aviation, so I enlisted with a guarantee to get to flight school and
Okay.
learn how to fly helicopters. And the training for it was, we first started in Fort Walters, Texas, at the primary helicopter school. And we basically learned how to fly small helicopters and trainers and go through some basic training. And then we went to Fort Rucker, Alabama, where we were introduced to the Huey helicopter and
Yeah.
learned how to fly this
Yes.
and our continued training. But the training was a total of almost a year. And then, of course, we knew at that time we're almost automatically we were going to Vietnam. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what's other in the flight school, our motto was, and the patch what actually said on the arm patch, above the best.
Above the
And
best.
we were trained to be, above the best. The best are on the ground, and our job was to do whatever it took to support the ground troops.
Wow.
And that's why I think the Huey is recognized so much, and the sound of the Huey, which
Yeah,
is
can we
kind
see
of
that?
neat that they put this
Oh,
in there as well.
can you hear that? Listen to that. As I said earlier, just hearing that sound makes my, what does this do for you, Byron? What?
It just, it brings back memories, both good and bad.
Yeah.
People ask me about Vietnam. They say, well, what was Vietnam? Or what do you think? I said, it was a good, bad memory.
Yeah.
Would you do it again? Yes, I would. And yes, there were a lot of bad times, but there were a lot of good times. I learned a lot about myself,
Yeah.
and it was a growth situation, but there were some difficulties with it as well. So
What are some of the things you think that you took lifelong lessons from, maybe from maybe the heat of some of your missions?
that's a difficult question.
Yeah.
I really don't know how to answer it.
And that's okay. Maybe maybe we'll come back to that or not. When people think and they see you and they're recognized Vietnam veterans, right? It took so many years. Do you feel like do you feel recognized now more than you ever have, at least 20, 30, 40 years?
Oh, absolutely. I
Yeah.
think, the country's evolved. At the time that Vietnam was going on, the whole country was in a state of cultural revolution.
Yes.
There's so many different things going on, and it was protests, ban the bra,
Yes.
burn
Everything.
the flag,
Yes.
sex, drugs, rock and roll. Everything was going on. So, and sometimes when I got back from Vietnam, of course, you didn't even want to acknowledge that you were Vietnam veteran because of what was going on.
Right.
And people were against the war.
Yeah.
Most of the veterans were labeled, I should say not most, we had a label put on us that we were all alcohol and drug addicts.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it was tough to get a job, and you just didn't even really mention it. And keeping all of that bottled up inside of one, I think that had a big effect on a lot of people,
Yes.
that they didn't want to talk about it. And really the healing is getting out and talking about it. And I found that out after I got involved with the VA and talking about different situations, both good and bad, and opening up. And, it helps
That's so
helps
important,
clear.
Byron. That's so important. And, you never know which way these interviews are going to go. But I want to stay right here with mental health, right? And the things that every soldier goes through, but soldiers like yourself who went through a hard time and then came back and the world turned their back on you. And then, like you said, you didn't want to talk about it because either you were labeled a certain way or you were shunned. It was hard to get a job. Let's talk about that, Byron. How old were you when you got out?
Well, when I went to Vietnam, I was 22.
Okay.
And of course, I served a year in Vietnam. And then after that, we had a commitment. And I came back and was a flight instructor in Fort Walters, Texas, and taught a lot of Vietnamese students how to fly.
Okay.
And I got out of the service in December of 70.
Okay.
So I was like 24 years old when I got out of the service.
Okay, so now you're out. You take the uniform off. Thank you, Byron, for your service. What are those days like, or what are those months like after that? Where did you know what you wanted to do, or did you try to go back to work right away? What was that like?
Total confusion, I guess.
Right. What do I do now?
Exactly. You've got to try to get a job. Well, you go out and try to get a job, and a lot of people, they just, oh, you're a Vietnam vet, and just kind of no. And it was kind of neat that the company I started working for, probably 6 months after I got out, I found this company that had a government subsidized training program.
Oh yeah.
Management training program.
Yeah.
Didn't pay a lot, but at least it got a job and got me started in the finance industry and in consumer lending. And then my career just kind of grew with that. And so it was beneficial at that point. So,
Byron, I can't imagine, like you said, I mean, here you are in charge of lives and the safety and the protection of thousands, flying a piece of equipment like this, right? Entrusted by the government to operate at a high level. And it was hard to get a job.
Yeah.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, it's almost like they can't see that, but translate to forward to today's, it's almost the same thing for some people. Oh, you did this well, you're probably not going to fit here, or I'm probably not going to be good. So it's on both sides, right? I think people need to talk more, and we need to say, okay, what is it that you really did? And here's what I think. We were all asked the highest responsibility for most of us, right?
Right.
Entrusted with much equipment and entrusted to say, I will sacrifice myself up to my life. Who wouldn't want to hire someone like that?
Yeah.
It's hard, I know.
It is difficult, but I think unless you've been there, people don't understand. It changes you, and I think everyone knows that.
Yeah.
So
yeah, talk about mental health. So were you just completely almost silent about it, Byron? Because even John Bode tells me, hey, I don't talk to Uncle Byron too much about it, but I mean, we're proud of him. But how are you when it comes to talking about your time in Vietnam now versus before?
I don't have a problem about it now.
Yeah.
And
right.
where before it was just kind of like a non-subject.
Yeah.
God, and people really weren't interested.
Really?
They really weren't interested in you as a person, about what you did, what things went on, or anything like that. Anyway, that was my experience.
Yeah.
Maybe others had a different experience.
Sure.
And I'm sure that, the people who served in Vietnam that maybe stayed in the military, they had a chance to decompress because they had, camaraderie with like-minded. And I think that's the difference of the lesson that was learned about Vietnam by the government, by the military, in World War I, World War II, the Korean War.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was sent over as a unit.
Yes.
So they had camaraderie. They built the team spirit. They went over together. They did their mission. They came back together. So they had a chance to decompress, talk about it. Vietnam, when you were done with whatever training you did, you were processed, through central processing, on the West Coast. You were sent to Vietnam, and you entered country. Went through processing, and individually, one guy went north, one guy went south, one guy went east. You were all split up, and
that was it.
then you entered your unit, and you didn't have a chance. Your unit, because it was a constant rotation.
Yeah.
One guy may be there a week before he goes home. Another one just got there. Another one might be there 2 or 3 weeks. So you form friendships, but not solid. Well, you had solid bonds, but not a permanent bond like some of the other ones had,
like
previously.
Train together, get stationed together,
Exactly.
deploy together as a pack or a group or a troop or a squad, right? And you're right, it was probably chaos at just the churning of people coming in and out of Vietnam. Like you said, I mean, I that's such a good perspective. No one, as long as I've been in the military, as long as I've studied, I've never heard that perspective before, Byron.
Well, and you see now, they don't do that. I mean, Desert Storm,
Yes.
Afghanistan,
Yes.
they're all going over as unit, coming
Yes.
back as units.
And celebrating together.
Yeah,
almost
so
as unit.
somebody higher up recognized what I just said. And so
Yeah.
it's changed. I don't think they'll ever do that again.
Yeah.
And I think that's another reason that probably a lack of recognition or a lack of concern. Nobody really talked about it.
Talking about it, if people engage people like you, Byron, or yourself specifically, and they ask you questions, I mean, what do you want most people to know, now? What do you want them to know now? If you could just say, hey, I want this to resonate with you. This is what I want you to think about when you think about Vietnam veterans specifically. What do you want them to know? That's a hard question.
Well, just think we're no different than any other person who went to war, who had a conflict, and came home and recovered. And I think that's what's neat about this particular memorial that the state of Nebraska or the veterans here in the Vietnam Veterans of America chapter here in Omaha put together.
Yeah.
It's honoring all veterans.
Yes.
It's not just the Vietnam veterans. We're just an era. That's what's so neat about this. People that haven't visited this memorial just don't. If you get a chance to visit it, it's spectacular.
It's vast. Would you say this is part of your healing process too?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And, it was, one part of it is, the crew members of this helicopter, another pilot, our company commander, a door gunner, the crew chief, we had a chance to reunite.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't have been possible without this memorial. And that was healing in itself, just to sit down and talk about some things. In our off time at the hotel.
Yeah.
Just general BS.
Yeah, that's right. Hanging out with the troops, right?
Yeah. And lying and telling war stories amongst ourselves.
So, when you travel in the airports, do you ever connect with other veterans? Sometimes you may have the hat on, they might have a shirt on. I mean, do you ever, is there a silent connection?
Yeah, every once in a while, I think you see, like a hat.
Yeah.
I don't normally wear hats.
Yeah.
But
I'm glad you did today, though.
Every once in a while, you see it, you just say, welcome home, brother. And you get that back. If you're recognized, if you got something on that is there, the Vietnam veterans recognize each other, I think, quite readily.
Yeah.
And a lot of people now, I think, due to, just general publicity, if they hear that you are a Vietnam veteran, a lot of people just say thank you for your service.
Absolutely.
And that's what's so cool. I mean, without even knowing it, they just hear that you are a veteran.
Yes.
And not necessarily just a Vietnam veteran. I think it's just kind of the American public, I think, is more attuned to dishonoring
Yes.
if they're patriotic. There's,
Yes.
of course, there's some that in our country that don't care.
Right. And you know, I mean, that's a whole nother podcast in itself. And here's how I feel. I'm patriotic, and I know the people that surround us are. Patriotism to me is the honor and respect of all those, the shoulders who I've stood on, right? Patriotic is a love for your country. I mean, this country opened its arms for my parents when they came here. But when I first joined the military, Byron, I didn't join because I was patriotic. I joined to get away from California. After 10 years, I learned, you know, pressure, sacrifice, things of that nature. It wasn't until probably 10, 15 years after. I mean, I'm 29 years out of the service now. I probably feel more strongly about it now than I did when I was in.
I think that's a good perspective. I think that I probably do too.
Yeah.
Because I think now we're seeing a lot of people who want to, well, I look back, you know, what made this country great? You know, it's the immigration, it's the blending of cultures,
Yes.
it's everyone becoming an American.
Yes.
And, you know, you had the Irish blending with the, you know, with everybody, you know,
Yes,
and,
yes.
you know, we had times, and now it seems like everything wants to be separate. You know, everyone wants to maintain their own culture. They want to fly their own flag. And no, we're, you know, or I'm this American, I'm that American, you know, the label.
Yeah.
We should be just Americans.
Well, Americans.
We're just Americans.
I mean, we are, that's, you know, when I see.
And I wish that, you know, the divisiveness that I see today, I wish that could go away and we could just be all Americans.
I mean, you fought to keep us all united, right, and strong and together. And when I see some of these people, the protests or the this rally or that protest, you know, one is, yes, we did fight for that freedom of speech, but number two is, just because you have freedom of speech doesn't mean that you can be an idiot.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? And well,
Yeah.
you can be an idiot. Just be ready for the repercussions. Oh,
Very well put.
Byron, when you stepped foot here at this memorial, okay, we're switching subjects here. What day was it when you first stepped on this memorial? Was it just a few days ago?
The 5th of June.
5th of June. Okay.
Yeah.
So you stepped on the 5th of June.
It was the day before the formal dedication.
Yes. So you entered. How bring us back to that moment.
It's overwhelming. I guess to see it in its glory, you can't imagine the dedication that everyone put into it. It brought tears to my eyes, and just the thought, the dedication, and to feel that I'm part of being honored in this memorial.
Yeah.
As all veterans can feel that way.
Yes.
You know, and you go around, and like I mentioned earlier, this memorial has a special dedication to the crew of the Frank Evans.
Yes. Yeah.
Which, you know, that's a unique story in history all by itself. That's, you know, it's sad that they aren't recognized. Where here they are recognized. You know, the 3 Nebraska veterans that were killed in the Frank Evans.
Yeah.
Their name is on the black wall in this memorial.
Right.
But it's not on their names are not on any other black wall in the country, as well as their 71 crewmates who were killed in a tragic accident in 1969.
And they don't classify as killed in action.
No, they don't. The government didn't classify them as killed in action for some stupid reason. So, who knows?
Well,
they're recognized here.
Yeah.
And that's another unique thing about this memorial. And you see the flags flying here.
Yeah.
One flag for every branch of the service.
Yeah, I mean, this is breathtaking. This is again my first time here, and sitting with you, Byron. When I talked to John, I said, John, I know Byron's getting pulled at from different directions. Do you think I could podcast with him? And he goes, let me ask. He goes, I don't know. You've been pretty busy since you've been here, right? I mean, doing,
But it's been fun.
nature.
It's
Yeah.
been fun.
Yeah. Um, Military men and women today, what's some advice you want to give them? I know. These are good questions, Byron. These are all.
You threw out a tough question.
Yes, yes.
Be proud. Be proud of what you're doing. And do it because you love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's probably why they're in the military to begin with. They've got a passion or a reason that well, most of the time now everyone is enlisting in the military. So they did it for a reason. What's the reason? Well, maybe their ancestors were in it. Maybe their brother. Maybe, who knows what the reasons are. But I think they have a reason to be proud.
Yeah.
Just to be in the military wearing a uniform, representing the country.
I think that's important, and it transitions us to the next question, which is, there's a brother or sister out there right now who's recluse. They're pulled back. They're not having the average experience or they're not having a good experience with life, and they know they should get help. Everyone knows they should get help. What do you want to tell that person?
That's our veteran. Get involved with the VA.
Yeah.
There's help there if you seek it out. And, there's still too many that don't talk about it, and there's too many that, they take their own lives.
Yes.
Because they don't talk about it. They didn't get the help. That's the sad part.
It's important that people know that, talking is everything. It doesn't mean you have to talk about every explicit detail. It just means open up. It just means that it's important that we know that we've been through some pressure cooker.
Right.
You've been through a pressure cooker, and that's not normal.
Yeah.
But, and then what do you say to the people who are civilians who've never served, but they want to talk to someone like Byron? They want to, hey, I want to talk to my dad. I want to talk to my uncle. I want to talk to my grandfather, but they just don't have the guts to do it because they don't want to make them mad. What would you say to those people?
You never know unless you ask.
Right. So Byron, back in the day when, maybe when you were going through challenges, would you have gotten mad at someone reaching out to tell you that they love you?
So I don't think so. No,
Reach out.
no, I don't think so.
Do you remember any conversations that were hard? Like when people reached out to you, did you have a hard challenge or not? Maybe your experience was different.
I don't think I was ever really asked a whole lot.
Yeah, that too.
I think people just kind of said, oh, again, maybe the label came into the effect.
See, and that's important, Byron, because people get labeled. Oh, that's your Uncle Byron. He was in Vietnam. Think of how many times that was said, not even disrespectfully,
Yeah.
just even like as a word of caution. But Byron's human.
Right.
He's a human being, just like you said.
Well, and so often, you look around all the labels that are out there, the different races, the different cultures,
Yes.
all of that, and that, oh, well.
Byron's just a human being at the end of the day.
We all are.
Yeah.
We all are.
Yeah. Byron, maybe a couple more questions and we'll end this, but I always think about just our country in general and the patriotism and some of the things that we stand for. And then I think 20 years from now, I think 40 years from now, with all these things that are happening, what are you most worried about when it comes to, or are you worried about our future? Or And then on the other side of that is how can we make it better? So what are you most worried about now, 20, 40 years when
Well,
it comes to our sentiment?
the divisiveness that we see
Yes.
in the political parties right now,
Yes.
it's upsetting.
Mm-hmm.
And, we used to have a middle ground.
Yeah.
Yes, we're all going to have different opinions on the right and on the left, but there was always a middle ground where commonality and sensibility can be reached. I'm not seeing that now. Everyone's worried about that
Yeah.
now. And, they're saying different things. And I guess I look at it that this country has been through some real difficult times. And everyone says, I feel sorry for the younger generation. I feel sorry for my grandkids or whatever. And they say, I think about it. There's a lot of very smart young people out there. And in spite of all the difficulties, I'm optimistic. I believe they're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
They're going to figure it out and get it back to the common ground.
Yeah. I mean,
Or at least I hope so.
if we could keep putting stakes in the ground on unfounded foundation, we're just gonna keep going on the slippery slope. But I appreciate that. The next final probably part of this is I want to concentrate on this. Give me some memories from this. Give me some of your first day with it. Like, hey, this is what you're going to be assigned to. What was that like?
I guess exciting because,
I mean, you were 22.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was actually an old man.
Yeah, compared to the youngins who are 18 who are joining the service.
Well, and there were a lot of pilots who were 19, 20 years old.
Yeah.
21 years old, maybe. And, I was at 22, I was a little older than
A little more
most.
mature.
Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
But we had, one guy in our unit was 35 or 36, so, but the majority were young guys, we were
Yeah.
just doing our job just like everybody else. But the thing was, we developed a love of flying or want to
Yes.
fly.
Oh my gosh.
It's an adventure. It's
not?
a new adventure. Like, boy, what's going to become of this, and, yes, you're worried, what am I getting involved in?
Yes.
Or what's going to happen?
Of course.
So you never know. But, we had some good evening conversations sometimes got a little strange, a little fun.
Oh, I'm sure.
Some songs were sung.
Oh, yeah.
And matter of fact, the other pilot here, he gave us all a CD of different songs that were sung by the pilots in the evening.
My gosh.
And in between it says, it breaks and it says, I think it's time for more beer before we sing.
Wow.
So, but yeah, to begin with, it's the unknown, but it's an exciting unknown. I guess that's the best way of putting it.
Yeah.
Of how I felt, okay, I'm in this unit now. What's going to happen next? Okay, I know I'm going to be flying a helicopter, but
Yeah.
it's the but.
It's the butt. That's what makes the story. When you had to leave this thing, did you ever think you'd see it again?
No,
Never.
no.
You just thought that was it? Okay. It was
Well,
a blip in time. It was such a blip in your
And you don't
life.
think about it.
Right.
It was just a machine. It really, the tail number had no significance. It
No.
was a helicopter.
Yes. Now it does.
Yeah, it was a vehicle. It was a tool to do your job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, who would think that it'd be restored to its condition now?
Yeah. Yeah.
I
And
mean,
have the significance of it with the crew members, with, some of the special things that did happen on air.
yeah.
And I'll say it,
Yes.
one crew member, the door gunner who was assigned to this aircraft, he was supposed to be here for the dedication after the helicopter was restored. Well, he died just shortly before.
Yeah.
And, of course, at the dedication or the unveiling after the restoration, we all signed the helicopter, and it's been preserved that way. Well, somebody thought the door gunner who died should be preserved, so some of his ashes were put in an urn and put in the ammo can that you could see on the
Yeah,
helicopter,
right there.
and the ammo can was welded shut.
I mean, Byron, first of all, I can't believe that piece of technology got up into the air like it did, right? I mean, how,
Cranes.
oh, well, I'm talking about
Yeah.
in its glory. You know what I mean?
Right.
In its glory. When you flew this thing, I mean, it was a new machine.
Right.
It was a new helicopter. How did you feel about the technology then? Were you, like you said, hey, there until but.
Well,
After a while, you probably didn't think about it.
and actually, this helicopter doesn't have much technology in it.
You're right.
It's
right.
very basic. It's
Yeah.
a very basic machine compared to what the military has today as far as
Right, right.
helicopters.
No, right.
It's real basic. I've even said to some, I don't think I'd want to fly today because they know everything you were doing all the time.
Oh yeah. How many missions did you fly in this thing?
I don't know. We never really counted missions.
Counted missions.
I had 1,025 hours of combat time of flying. So you figure a work year is 2,080 hours, a 40-hour week.
Yeah.
So in 1 year, I flew for a half a year.
In combat.
Yeah.
That's incredible. I can't even imagine. I mean, so some of us.
And not only this helicopter, but we had a smaller helicopter that we did a different mission with.
Yeah.
So my whole time was not flying a Huey.
Yes.
Another helicopter. It was called a OH-6A. They called it a Loach,
Yeah.
which did scout reconnaissance.
Okay.
Which was
Yeah.
treetop, low level,
Yeah. Wow.
stuff like
Yeah,
that.
there was
Stuff
that
like
that technology wasn't there in the day. That was all skill. It
Well,
was mostly skill. I'd say,
and you just, the machine just doing, you didn't have computers, you didn't have all the fancy stuff and navigation aids and,
yeah. I think that's
kind of like a Model A compared to a current car.
a Model A. Oh my gosh! And then, so talk to me about that. You said you all signed up there. Tell us about that. The dog, you were calling it a dog.
Yeah, it's basically well, you can't really see it behind the door gunner there,
Right.
but there's kind of a rectangular piece that comes down from the transmission, from the mast of the rotor,
Yep.
and all the gearing and everything is in there.
Yeah.
And they just call that the doghouse. I don't know how I got that name, but anyway, there's flat walls there, and we had the opportunity to sign the flat walls, all the people that were involved with it, who did the refurbishment of the aircraft so it could be displayed, as well as the crew members. So
That's incredible.
and then they've cleared over that, so that's kind of a permanent deal too. So as long as the helicopter remains here, hopefully the weather in Nebraska doesn't get too bad.
Yeah. Did you guys?
The tornadoes and stuff like that.
Oh, knock on wood. Last final thing. I mean, did you guys ever play any pranks on each other as a crew on here? Did you guys ever give each other crap at all, or? I mean, guys are guys, right? Like,
Giving crap was normal,
yeah,
but when you're flying the mission, probably no.
no, not
There were no games to be played.
absolutely.
It was, and but afterwards,
There's some untold good stories. Well,
yes.
well, Byron, I appreciate our time together more than you know. There's so many things inside of this podcast that I want people to take away from. I want you to know, most of all, this is probably selfish gift for me, and to share with others. I honor your story, Byron. I'm not trying to make you out to be some superhero or anything like that, but I want you to know I do see you. I recognize you as the history of our country, history of our military, that you served honorably, and you sacrificed a bunch.
Yeah, but I had a lot of fun at the same time.
I'm sure you did.
So,
Any final words at all, Byron, and as we close out here?
well, I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity or asking me to do this, and I respect you a lot because of what you've done in the 50-mile march and getting that foundation started,
Thank you.
and all you do for the veterans. And the goals that you've done, I think this is what, the fourth year
Yeah.
that you're doing the march? And
I'm a little emotional, Byron, because
what is the goal for fundraising this year for your foundation? I know you have nearly 200 people that are walking.
161 this year. Sorry, I got a little emotional. Coming from you, that means so much because I want to do it for guys who've been through it, right? And yes, the fundraising goal is 1.2, 1.5 million. That's the goal, but the goal is to keep one more alive. One more alive.
That's pretty amazing to hear your goal that way.
Yeah. I mean,
You don't know how much that means.
Sorry. I would have.
Well, you know, you can't help but bring tears to your eyes.
You know, Byron, thank you. Thank you, Byron. You can end it here. You still can end it right here. Thank you for your service to our country, brother.
Thanks for tuning in to The Connection. It's been a fantastic journey exploring stories, insights, and inspirations that bridge our lives. Remember, every connection has the power to transform. Please subscribe, rate, and review. Your feedback keeps us going. In this connected world, let's make meaningful connections that enrich lives. Now, signing off until next time. The Connection. Keep connecting and let's go.